All right, today we're going to tackle a question that is just timeless. And we're using a really powerful ancient text, Ezekiel chapter 18, as our guide. This chapter gets right to the heart of things like family fate, that idea of inherited guilt, and what it means to have individual freedom. So let me just ask you this straight up. Have you ever felt like you're paying for the mistakes of your ancestors? Like you're stuck in a cycle that started generations before you? It's a heavy thought for sure, but believe me, you are not the first person to feel that way. Thousands of years ago, the Jewish exiles in Babylon, they felt completely hopeless, and they were asking the exact same question. And they even had a saying for it, this little proverb that kind of became their go-to excuse for all their suffering. It was their way of saying, hey, this mess we're in, it's not our fault. It's our parents' and grandparents' fault. So what they're really doing is shifting the blame and, kind of accusing God of being unfair for punishing them for sins they didn't even commit. But then God steps in and directly confronts this whole victim mentality. He lays down a principle that was honestly pretty radical for the time: individual accountability. The idea is simple, but huge. Every single person is judged based on their own choices and actions. And to make this absolutely crystal clear, he tells a story about 3 generations. So let's see how this whole thing plays out. The story sets up the scenario. You've got a good, righteous man. He has a son who turns out to be, well, wicked. And then that son has a son of his own. So the big question is the grandson doomed? Is he just destined to repeat the same mistakes as his father? Okay, what I think is so cool here is how it breaks down the process of actually changing. The grandson doesn't just stumble into being a good person. No, it's a 3-step process. First, he sees all the wrong things his father has done. He doesn't ignore it. Then he considers it. He actually thinks about it, weighs the consequences. And finally, he makes a conscious choice to act differently. See, this isn't about fate at all. It's a deliberate, thoughtful decision to break that generational pattern. So, what does that different action actually look like? Well, it's a total 180 from his father's life. He turns his back on idolatry, he treats his neighbors with honor, he feeds the hungry, clothes the naked, he refuses to oppress the poor. He basically does everything right. In fact, his life ends up mirroring his righteous grandfather's life. And this just perfectly shows that goodness isn't something you inherit, right? It's a choice. It's a path you decide to walk. So, after all that, what's God's final verdict? It's laid out right here, clear as day. The wicked father, that middle generation, he dies for his own sin. But the righteous grandson, God says he will not die for his father's iniquity. He, because of his own choices, will surely live. Bam! The chain is broken. The so-called generational curse, it stops right there. Now, it's really important to understand that this story isn't just some nice little hypothetical. It's meant to be an illustration of a divine law. This is a foundational rule for how God is going to deal with his people from this moment on. And this verse, this is the absolute core of the whole argument. God is drawing a line in the sand, and it is crystal clear. The son will not be punished for the father's sin, and the father won't be punished for the son's. The righteousness of a righteous person is on them, and the wickedness of a wicked person is on them. Your dad's goodness can't save you, and his mistakes can't condemn you. You stand before God on your own 2 feet, responsible for your own life. Full stop. Okay, so you'd think that would settle it, right? I mean, freedom from all your ancestors' baggage, that sounds like amazing news. But the people weren't convinced. They were still skeptical. They still saw themselves as victims. It's pretty amazing, but even after this incredibly clear teaching, they kept complaining. Their go-to line was still, "The way of the Lord is not equal." They were just so stuck in that blame game mindset that they couldn't even see the incredible freedom and justice God was holding out to them. They just kept insisting his ways were unfair. And God's response is just so powerful. He completely flips the script on them. He basically asks, hold on a second, are my ways unequal? Or could it be that your ways are unequal? He turns the mirror right back on them, challenging them to stop blaming him and take a hard look at their own inconsistent lives. And here's why he can say their ways are unequal. Because this whole principle of personal choice, it cuts both ways. It's not like you can just build up a bank account of good deeds and then cash it in to live however you want. If a righteous person turns their back on all that and chooses wickedness, they're going to be judged for that wickedness. But, and this is the incredible part, if a wicked person turns away from their sin, They will be forgiven. They will live. Your past doesn't get the final word. So, what's the whole point of all this? Is God just trying to lay down some harsh new rules about judgment? Absolutely not. As we get to the end of the chapter, you see that this whole declaration of justice is really something else entirely. It's a profound invitation to life. And just listen to the tone here. This isn't some angry command. It's a plea. Repent and turn, so iniquity shall not be your ruin. It's like God is standing there actively trying to pull his people back from the edge of a cliff. He's pointing and saying, look, here's the escape route from the destruction you're heading towards. And right here, we get to see the motivation behind everything. Honestly, this is one of the most revealing verses about God's character in the whole Old Testament. He says he takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked. His desire, what actually brings him pleasure, is seeing someone turn around, choose a different way, and really, truly live. And so we end with this final, powerful challenge. This whole chapter, remember, it started with a bitter proverb about blaming your parents, and it ends with this passionate plea from God himself. It's not a threat, it's an offer. God is laying out the choice with total clarity. Your past doesn't define you, your parents don't define you, you get to choose. So the question he leaves them with, and maybe us too, is, wherefore turn yourselves and live ye?